paths crossed at Wisley. We were both Wisley students, 95 to 96. And from there, I went to work for Oxford University Parks in the Parks Department in Oxford. And I spent 2 years. And after a little while, someone said, "Oh, the man down the road who's building the lecture theatre, he's looking for a gardener." And I thought, "Ooh, I quite fancy a change." And so I applied for that and then went into private service. And so for the last 20 years, I'd worked for Sir Martin Wood, engineer extraordinaire. And then I worked for Sir Richard and Lady Lapthorne and for their private house. And so worked up the gardening scale, so to speak, to gardener in charge. And so it was very much like here, but on a much smaller scale. And so whenever we came here, it wasn't a surprise. It was doing what we'd already been doing for many years, but on a much grander scale. But Richard, for his journey, it was
totally different.
Yeah.
So we both did a horticultural course at Writtle. I was in my final year when Rosie was starting there, but our paths didn't cross there. As Rosie said, we met at Wisley, and I had done a couple of other gardens before that, working at Stowe, Hascombe Court, Ethrop, which is Lord Rothschild's private house, and then we did Wisley, and then I was fortunate enough to work at Chequers, the Prime Minister's country residence, before then taking up a placement at Wadston Manor in Buckinghamshire, where I started as a craft gardener, went up through the levels of responsibility to assistant gardens manager. And I was there for just shy of 22 years before then spreading my wings and coming here to Houghton.
We frequently during the season, at the beginning and end of the season, we have to come close down the glass houses late. And so we're in the garden late on our own, just thinking, wow, this is just so special. And then we put it to Lord and Lady, would you mind if we had? And they were very enthusiastic. And so it went from there, trying to decide on an evening. And then the first one was a trial just to see if there was an appetite for it. And it turns out that there was. And so we did a second one as well. So it was literally just a thought that we are here and this is so special in the evening because the light's completely different, and the smells, the fragrance, the birds, the moths, the bats, everything. It's a totally different experience to through the day.
And some of the flowers, they really do almost pop in the evening light, you know, which they would naturally do in nature. So it gives a totally different feel, and also it gives an insight of having the garden to themselves, really. And it's just a great time of the evening.
There were approximately 60 for both events, and they were relatively different people. You know, it wasn't the same people doing it twice, and so yeah, it was popular, and it was literally just a taster to see if it was possible, and so having now done 2 of them this summer, we're probably hoping to do at least 2 or 3 next summer.
Yeah. Houghton Hall got built for the first British Prime Minister, Sir Robert Walpole, in the 1720s. And in fact, it's remained in the same family ever since. The hall got built by Campbell and Gibbs, and its interior is well documented by William Kent. And its wider landscape is a Charles Bridgeman design. Now, the walled garden itself historically has always been here, with fruit production at the far end and vegetable production at this end. And it has, over the generations, estates mature, become over mature, and things do go in decline. And Houghton Hall's history has gone up and down over the centuries. But by the time Lady Sybil Cholmondeley inherited Houghton, things were quite run down. And she had to focus her attentions on matters within the hall, but also the immediate landscape around. And that's probably where the current Lord Cholmondeley got some of his passion for horticulture. So that when Lord Cholmondeley inherited Houghton in 1989, it was his vision to dedicate a proper garden to his grandmother, Lady Sybil Chumbing. And so he asked Paul Underwood, the head gardener at the time, Simon Martin, and Pamela Lane Smith, a design consultant, to come up with a design for this 5-acre walled garden. And so there was bits of box, there were some mature fruit trees and a dilapidated glass house, and as features from yesteryear. And so there was a thought of consideration when the area was cleared, what to do with this garden. And it was decided that this garden should be based around reflection and solitude. I think you learn everything from different head gardeners, and certainly I've been fortunate enough to have very good head gardeners all the way down the line. It started with Graham Rankin, who's, for me, it was a magnolia specialist, and he really did nurture me. And then, as I said, going through working within the National Trust, you pick up things from everyone, whether head gardeners or even students. They can inspire you in the way they work, the manner they work, and you never stop learning in horticulture.
One of the people who influenced me most whenever we were at Wisley, Mr. Waite, and Mr. Waite was, he's still regarded to me as Mr. Waite because that's the respect that he was shown from all of the students and the staff who worked there. And he was the glasshouse specialist, and he was extraordinary. He worked everyone hard, but we all learned so much from him. And so right from early on at Wisley, he was sort of one of my biggest influences, other than my granny.
Plans are afoot that already coming up with tentative designs for our veg garden that is now a potager, so a mixture of vegetable, flowers and herbs, and we want to up the game again there. We have our cherry walk, which the beds are empty, so there's a new planting scheme to go in there, and its thoughts are with the family on that issue. We need to straighten up some of these edges as well, and also we need to have a program of mulching certain beds so that they because we're very sandy soil here, and so it dries out very quickly, so we need to think much more on the water retention. There has been a program, but we need to up the game on that.
The Japanese embassy has been introduced what they call their Sakura project, and they have wanted to give cherry trees to lots of places that are open to the public so that many more people can enjoy cherry blossom in the spring. And so in next month we'll receive our allotted amount of cherry trees, and they'll be planted out closer to the house. And so that's a sort of, this has been rumbling for about 2 years, and so now it's going to actually happen.
We want to try and move the garden forward still. We've now got a good resource of, for a better word, of volunteers, but there's always finessing. You can always finesse, and as I say, we always want the garden to be in a presentable state so the family are happy to come down, and that's the challenge, is to make sure we achieve that and do the best we can do horticulture. So yes, we've taken a steep curve upwards.
It was tough. The first year was tough.
But it's not going to stop, because there's always, as I say, and the next thing that I've already said. So and that's how we want to improve it, and for people visiting to get the experience and enjoyment of coming here.
That first year we were here 5 weeks whenever COVID struck for the very first time, and then our team was furloughed. And since we lived on the street and we sort of created a bubble of our own, we were in with our son, who was 10 at the time, and so there were 3 of us chipping away. Richard worked on one side of the garden, and Michael and I worked on another, and we sort of met at tea breaks. What have you done? Where have you at? And that's sort of how we muddled through COVID. And then we got to a point where it's like, we can't, April, everything's going crazy. It's like we can't get through until we can't get through May until on our own. We just can't. So Yaroslav Karpek, who is our master hedge cutter, or I call him master of the hedges because he does such a great job. Yaroslav was brought in first of all, and he stayed in a different office, and so it seems crazy now looking back on it, but we're all sort of keeping ourselves sort of separate. And then whenever at the end of the 12 weeks, when the other members of staff were brought back, the place was in a fairly decent state. It hadn't slipped back in the same way that other properties had during that time, and I think that was to our benefit. We kept it ticking over. And yeah, it was we were working late. We were here with the oyster catchers. We spent lots of time at the weekends doing weekend duties because it was us. There wasn't the rest of the team to be able to do. But where else were we where else were we going to go? You know,
advantage we had that Lord and Lady Cholmondeley bought their own tools, and they came down here and worked in a separate area. So they worked on the lawn border here whilst we were elsewhere in the garden. So
yeah, they helped.
and that was a
Yeah,
great help
they
as
were
well.
locked down just like us, so
Yeah,
it was something to do. Outside the walled garden, the groundsmen focus on the grass, and so in here we focus on the hedges, the pruning, the picking, the mulching, cultivating, everything sort of much more horticulturally based, as opposed to the generally turf care, which is outside. You know, we deal with turf care in here too, but outside the groundsmen deal generally just with turf care. People come here this year especially to see the Sean Scully from America, because he's regarded as an American sculptor, and so it's important to everybody who comes to see the Sean Scully that that looks really, really good out there. And so you know, Lord Cholmondeley wants to look out and see that it looks good as well, because he sees the west front more than he sees in the walled garden.
This garden has so many different aspects in it. You know, you've got the veg and fruit production. You've got the cut flower borders. You've got pieces of art, and then you've got. But it's all based around reflection and solitude, which is what they wanted the garden to be, and it does that in spades. You know, as well as being a proper walled garden, and there's a sort of surprise round every corner, whether you're a guest or a regular visitor. Even for us, when we walk around the garden, that's come into flower. That wasn't nowhere near last week. You know, this garden it changes all the time. And well, the team effort is straight from top to bottom. We've got our Kevin, who does the sort of mowing, and with Yaroslav, who does the hedges and stuff. And it's not they don't just do that. They partake in all activities.
But when you look around here, there's a lot of hedges.
Yeah.
And so someone cutting, someone clearing, it takes a long time. It's a big part of the summer.
Yeah, and then you've got Lindsay, who recently joined our team, and she brings a wealth of knowledge. And then we've got Joe, who's here 3 days a week, and we have a Professional Gardeners Guild student, Oliver, who's recently joined us at the end of August, and will be here for a year and then moving on to another place. And then obviously us too. And then we have Alicia, who is a Ukrainian woman who's been sponsored by the family, who does 2 days a week, and her passion is in working in the glass houses, but also comes out in the garden. You know, we all partake in everyone's tasks. And then the volunteers, as I say, some do full days, some do half a day, and you know, we've got 14 volunteers, and they're very passionate and enjoying. You may hear in the distance them laughing and having a good time whilst getting the tasks in hand done. So it's, as you said, relaxed, but enjoyment. And I can't really name the volunteers because, you know, I would feel terribly affronted if I forgot one of them. You know, but you know, we've got 14 girls and they're very dedicated, and I'm eternally grateful for their time they give.
They bring to us what they have been doing in the week, whether they've been rowing at Blakeney or on holiday in Corfu. You know, all of their experience, because we're sort of stuck in this little bubble. You know, it's really nice to find out what's going on in the rest of the world. And so they use it as therapy as much as we use them for their expertise. And so it's a win-win situation where everybody gains from it.
It's massive. You know, um, we went through a formal route, and then obviously to Wisley for the practical side of learning. You know, PGG is Professional Gardeners Guild. You know, they are, it's hands-on learning for 3 years at different properties, you know, and learning so much as you go along and picking up courses. So by the time they finish the Professional Gardeners Guild, they could be in a position that they could run a or be a supervisor to a small team. And obviously the world is their oyster when they're still young, you know. But to have that building of a CV right at the start of the career can really set them up for a marvelous career in
Yes.
different gardens within this country or further
The
afield.
rest of the world. You know, our previous students have gone on to Chatsworth, they've gone on to Windsor Great Park, they've gone on to Cambridge Botanic Gardens. So they're making a big CV for themselves. You know, Houghton Hall may not be very well known, but it's a launch pad for them to go to very well known places like Highgrove and so on.
Absolutely. I mean, from where the garden was 3.5 years ago, we've all taken a truly marvellous journey. All areas are at a standard that I hope the family feel proud of coming and looking around. And also to visitors, they constantly praise us. And it's not about individuals, it's about us as a team. And they have an opportunity to write in the visitor book, which we encourage to show to the family, so they can see all the comments that are of the day. So truly amazed, truly very proud of where we are, and are very much looking forward to where we're going in the future. And it's looking bright for us here at Houghton.
Yeah, but like Anglia Water, we're sort of never still, never stop. And Friday evening we go round, we try to take a good look round, see what needs doing for the next week. It never stops. It never ever stops.
No, you can't stop in a garden like this.
And our volunteers are amazed that there's still work to do for the next week, you know.